Hi, everyone. I'm joined by Robert Erickson, Grass Valley Strategic Accounts Manager, Sports/Venues. Robert, how are you doing?
Fantastic. It's good to be seeing you again, even though we're a little bit closer to seeing each other in real person here, hopefully.
That's it. Hopefully. Let's call
Looking forward to that day.
3 months.
Yep.
There was a time when seeing each other 3 months would be a long way off, but now it feels like really close. So,
right.
So let's roll through some topics here. Obviously, we want to give our viewers a chance to understand what's going on with Grass Valley as far as new products. There is no NAB in April this year. It will be in October. So I guess you have a few more months to get your ducks in a row for NAB. But what do you see as the biggest challenge right now facing the industry? Because obviously I know that you guys have a lot of solutions that can solve a lot of problems. So what do you kind of see some of the key challenges out there and how you guys kind of fit in to solve those problems?
So kind of semi-humorously and also very on topic, I think one of the challenges is how we're going to figure our lives out again, because we went from everything being local, everything being, we're flying people around, we're, running these big productions of people, to all of a sudden stop dead. Nobody's traveling, nobody's doing anything. And we had to completely reinvent how we did the industry. Now, those are largely two very extremely different ways of doing things. And I can kind of say a little from firsthand, just in the past few weeks, I've been traveling for work again, and which has been fantastic and refreshing. But at the same time, I'm having to remember how to respond to emails properly and call people back because I'm not sitting in front of my desk all the time, right? And I know there's kind of myopic on that, but as the industry as a whole, we will have to find a way to take these two extremes from the old way we used to do it, where we trucked everybody around and we had a ton of people in the facility, to everything's got to be remote. There will be a happy medium somewhere.
Right.
I think one of the most important things that we're missing from not being close to each other the past year or so is collaboration. I owe largely all of my success to the people I've surrounded myself with, and the people I can stick in the office and ask them, hey, what's going on? What's up with this product? How does this work? That kind of stuff. And I think we're all missing that. So I think the challenges we have moving forward on that is how can we meld the two? How can we still leverage the workflows we've developed in this last year to make productions more efficient where we can, but where can we start working in collaborative environments again, where we can also still make things more efficient, but we also can raise the quality of productions.
Right.
That's a challenge. And again, I think it's less of an equipment challenge, mainly because, a lot of the gear that's come out can support both, especially from the Grass Valley side.
Right.
It's more of a personnel thing. It's more of a management thing. It's more of how do we want to run our institution. I think that's going to be where those challenges are going to be in the short term, and that'll work themselves out, obviously.
Yeah, you don't have the conversations of, like, for example, guaranteed if we had a chance, and we being SVG staff, to be at the events and it was a normal world, we'd be talking probably a lot more about UHD and HDR at our events, and in general, because we would, I think, be having conversations about why you are doing it, why you aren't doing it. Now it's just sort of obviously on the back burner, but it isn't. I mean, it is still out there going on. So what do you see as far as and then of course you guys introduced some amazing products, like, AMP was like a huge leap and you had no way to like celebrate it. And right. So how do you kind of deal with that issue?
That's the interesting meld of the industry desperately needing a product and a company like Grass Valley that happened to, by our own foresight, which we didn't see COVID coming, but we saw the need for more enhanced and more efficient remote productions coming, melding at the same time, where the industry had a massive need and we had the ability to solve it. And for everybody who might not know what AMP is, what Grass Valley has been doing is we're taking all of the processing and functioning that we have in our traditional products. Say, for example, a switcher. What does a switcher do? It takes in video, transitions video, puts on keys, does DVEs, all that kind of stuff you'd expect from a switcher. For the past ever, we've had to do that in hardware.
Right.
So what AMP is the ability to do is take that functionality and put it into a data center, whether it's a private data center at the customer site, or whether it's on Microsoft Azure or AWS or anything along those lines. But what we found is once we started putting processing in the cloud, that the user interface, how do the users interact with the processing is really what matters. Because remember, we're the media industry. Our job is to create the most dynamic, the most powerful content we can. And if an operator, say it's a TD or a director, is sitting here having to worry about, oh, is this switcher going to work because it's in the cloud, or I have to completely relearn how to punch this show because it's a different interface, that was detrimental to the quality of the production.
Right.
So one of the most kind of powerful things that we've come out with AMP is how we can put the processing in the cloud or in the data center, but still use the Grass Valley control panel that everybody knows and loves, like a Carrera or Cayenne or a Chrono, and it just works. So an operator sits down to the panel they already know. It just happens to be connected to a cloud instance now. It's things like that. It's not just doing things in the cloud for the sake of doing things in the cloud, but it's given the human interface that people know how to interact with. And that's where we've really been focusing on AMP. Just this week, we launched an audio mixer for AMP.
Oh, cool.
And so now we're taking not just video switching in the cloud, but now we're taking IFBs, intercom, and audio mixing into the cloud. And we're working on interfaces where somebody can literally use a traditional audio mixer in their facility to control the one in the cloud, but it's just control. All the processing and everything like that is all done in the cloud. So that's what AMP is to us. So then we added stuff like up and down cross converters, HDR to SDR mappers, things like that. We're taking all the workflow tools that traditionally work in hardware, and we're starting to deploy them in an elastic and into a software-based ecosystem.
Right. So do you think in general, the move to the cloud, and you mentioned, let's take the audio boards. So, is there the potential to say, in the old days, being a year ago, 2 years ago, you would say, if I wanted to have 4 audio control panels, I'd have to buy 4 separate audio consoles, the whole shebang. Do you think there's going to be a point where you can have one cloud instance and then have multiple hardware interfaces so that the companies can more dynamically share those resources?
That's what our goal is. I mean, that is the plan. There's some economics, and I always like to be transparent on this. I'm not saying that this is the best, this is the final, this is what it'll ever be. There's some rationale to it. Short answer, yes, that's where we're going. Long answer, though, is if you're going to be doing one production for like 20 something hours a day, where most of the feeds are local, most of the content is local, and you're just doing cloud to do the sake of doing cloud, economically, it still may be more valid just to buy a traditional hardware switch or a traditional infrastructure.
Right.
Because compute, memory, CPU on the cloud, you pay for by the hour. And then you have, all the fees to get the data in and out. And so we've actually done a pretty good model of this. We're saying a lot of our customers are still doing traditional infrastructures for the heavy lifting. But if they just need to spin up a production control room to do a marketing bit, for example, if I'm at a stadium or venue and I've got an event going on, but I just need to spin up a small production control room for marketing to do a blurb or sales to do a blurb or something like that. That's what this cloud is all about. I can spin it up, consume it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and then spin it back down. But again, the important part is the control interfaces are all still the same. So to your point about the audio consoles, by the way, audio is way cheaper to do in the cloud, in AWS, because the compute is way less, the memory is way less, the bandwidth is way less. It's just video is hard.
Right.
And UHD is way harder in the cloud. So the ability to do exactly what you said is here today. There's no reason we can't do it. It's just working with the customers to find that economic point where it makes sense to do some on-prem, makes some sense to do in the cloud, or go all either way. That's what the discussions with us can can help.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be, the great thing to me is that this opens up a customer base that historically would not be able to quote unquote afford some of these bigger products. All of a sudden they can talk to you and you can have conversations and start the conversations, which is great. Exactly.
If you have a little bit of OpEx budget you can throw at it, then we can make the model work. And so you're 100% right. The nice thing is the quality of production can be done on a small scale in much in the same way as the large scale. So you want the high quality graphics, you want the high quality audio, you want things you'd expect out of a large show. We can now scale down. And so that gives people these opportunities to do very high quality productions for significantly less than they've ever been able to do before.
Sure, sure. So let's talk cameras, because I've always loved the Grass Valley cameras. And again, you guys kind of helped push forward with a lot of the, to your point, as far as people flipping on a feature in a camera as opposed to having to buy a dedicated camera that did X, Y, and Z, or just did X. What's going on in camera land as far as 3x UHD and what have you?
Yeah. So here's a really cool part. We're talking about, how the last year has changed our roadmap and changed our products. When we developed the LDX 100 camera, and the idea behind the LDX 100 camera is it's a UHD native camera. It does 3x super slow-mo, but here's the crazy part. It's IP only. Like the camera only does IP in and out of the camera head. Like if there's on the side of the camera buried in there, there's 100 gig SFPs or 25 gig SFPs in the camera head. Now we can run into a base station for customers with some legacy workflows, but to do 100 gig, to do 3x slow-mo over UHD, that's 48 gigabits per second.
Right.
Just for that one signal. So we had to go IP. The technology made us go there. So we were really focusing that camera to be a 3x UHD, super slow-mo, high dynamic range, wide color gamut, all the stuff that everybody wants to see today, all in the camera head. Like if you want to do, PQ or HLG or anything like that in the camera, you just turn on the software. But here's what changed from last year. It's tough to do 48 gigabits per second over a WAN. I mean, unless you're like Verizon and you have just more bandwidth than God, it's right. Just, you can't do it. So this is what makes Grass Valley's cameras so unique, is this wasn't on our roadmap a year ago. But today, if you buy an LDX 100, we support JPEG XS natively in the camera. No external cards, you're not buying a camera, then later you're buying a transcoder or something like that. You need JPEG XS, we hit it with the new firmware, you get JPEG XS out of the camera head. That's how we see the future of cameras. A lot of people make good imagers. Few people make camera control systems and cameras that are adaptable to workflows without adding more cards and more processors and more boxes. That's our goal. So that's kind of some of the newest stuff we've got coming down the pipe on the LDX 100. That's exciting because, we got the 3x super slow-mo on a standard lens mount, which nobody can do. But the fact we have native JPEG XS coming out of the camera head now is revolutionary.
Sure. So last question for you, as far as the next year, and look, no one can predict anything anymore. So, but I'll ask you anyway. Right. So what's your sense as far, let's go to the Beijing Olympics in 2022. Mm-hmm. So, where do you think we'll, and the Super Bowl that year, where do you think we'll be as far as, sports production? What things will be buzzing about, if you will? So
fun thing about the Olympics, the Olympics, as of what was supposed to be this last year, 2020, but also in 2022, they are now running their entire infrastructure off of Grass Valley IP infrastructure. So Cisco switches, Grass Valley gateways, Grass Valley multiviewers, and all of the HDR processing is all Grass Valley products. So we are very engaged with the Olympics right now because a lot of it's running our infrastructure. What I'm starting to see now is HDR 1080p is still going gangbusters. I can't go a day without having a conversation and usually an argument with somebody saying why 1080p HDR for North America is amazing. But one trend I'm seeing is people are starting to produce in UHD native, even though they're only going out of the facility at 1080p. There's a couple wins that we've had on the LDX 100s recently. Can't say what it is yet. Don't let customers be mad at me. But they're 1080p production, but their requirement was every camera has to do UHD and some cameras had to do 3x slow-mo UHD, not for the production, but for marketing, for archive, and for things along those lines. So we're seeing a huge uptick in UHD for switchers, which is good timing because we just came out with a switcher that's all UHD. But for 1080p productions. So people I don't want to say they're oversampling, but they're generating the content at the highest quality possible they can because they may be using it for things in the future or even in current times to meet their workflow needs. So we've seen a big explosion in UHD and HDR just in the past few months. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, coming from a lot of our customer side, and that's kind of what I'm seeing that we're going to be dealing with in the next year. It's going to be fantastic.
Excellent. It's great. Well, we will talk about that in person in October at the latest. Right.
I love it.
Great to see you as always. I really appreciate your time and all the support from Grass Valley. Stay safe. And like I said, see you sooner than later.